Strikes against civilian areas make destruction a backdrop to daily life. Against civilians, thousands of casualties, with a toll rising, millions of refugees, thriving cities besieged and reduced to rubble. Ukrainians continue to resist the Russian onslaught. Moscow, however, has claimed the cities of Severodonetsk and Lysychansk, cementing Russia's control of Luhansk province and allowing it to turn its focus to Donetsk. The other province is the eastern Donbas region. Russian artillery, rockets, and missiles have rained on cities and villages across Donetsk, even as its ground forces have seemingly paused their advance in order to regroup and resupply before a widely expected push deeper into the province. Many of the strikes have hit civilian areas, including markets, universities, and apartment and office buildings, making death and injury a daily reality for those who have not fled the Russian onslaught. 2 people were killed in Nikopol on Saturday when heavy Russian shelling hit the southern Ukrainian town, the emergency services and regional governor said. Rescuers recovered the bodies of 2 people in the rubble, the emergency services said. The regional governor of Dnipropetrovsk, Valentin Reznichenko, said that Russia fired 53 Grad rockets at the town. In another attack, a Russian missile strike hit the northeast Ukrainian town of Chuhuiv in Kharkiv region overnight at around 3:30 a.m. local time, killing 3 people, including a woman of 70, and wounding 3 more, the regional government said on Saturday. As Russia stepped up long-range bombardment of Ukrainian cities that has killed at least 34 people in the last 3 days and wounded scores, air raid sirens were sounded across Ukraine's capital Kyiv on Saturday. Strike hit the northeast Ukrainian town of Chuhuiv and Kharkiv region overnight, killing 3 people including a woman of 70 and wounding 3 more, the regional governor said on Saturday. The strike damaged a 2-story residential building, a school and a shop, and rescuers were going through the rubble, Governor Oleh Sinehubov and the police said. A regional police official said Russia fired 4 missiles at the town from near its western city of Belgorod at around 3:30 local time. Russia, which invaded Ukraine on February 24, denies targeting civilians in what it describes as a special military operation. Ukraine's defense ministry spokesperson said on Friday that only 30% of Russian strikes were hitting military targets, with the rest landing on civilian sites. Russia's defense minister calls on troops to step up military actions. Russia's defense minister Sergei Shoigu directed his country's troops to further intensify military actions across Ukraine, according to a statement on Saturday, as an escalation of fighting in the eastern Donbas region and deadly Russian missile strikes across Ukraine signaled that Moscow may be entering a more aggressive phase of its invasion. The defense ministry released a video showing Mr. Shoigu in fatigues, attending a briefing from military officers, and said in a statement that he had visited a command point in the field, without specifying when or where the visit had happened. The statement claimed that combat was being stepped up to stop Ukraine from shelling civilian areas in Russia-occupied territory. Mr. Shoigu, according to the ministry, gave the necessary instructions to further intensify the actions of groups in all operational areas in order to rule out the possibility of the Kyiv regime launching massive rocket and artillery strikes on civilian infrastructure and residents of settlements in the Donbas and other regions. After a relative lull in the Donbas region since the start of this month, when Lysychansk, the last city in Luhansk province, held by the Ukrainians, fell to Russian forces, Ukraine on Friday reported skirmishes and fighting in a string of locations along the jagged front line in Donetsk province. The 2 provinces made up the Donbas, and since Russian forces failed to take Ukraine's capital Kyiv earlier in the conflict, President Vladimir Putin has set the capture of the whole region as his immediate priority. Ukrainian defenders stopped the enemy's attempts to seize the road between Lysychansk and Bakhmut with heavy fire. According to a report by Ukraine's General Staff on Saturday, the road has been bitterly contested for months. 7 civilians have died in Donetsk since Friday and 10 more have been wounded, the report said, adding that over the same period Russian forces had conducted 4 rocket attacks, 4 artillery attacks, and 5 more sustained mortar attacks in the province. There was no immediate word from Moscow about the Ukrainian reports. Mr. Putin has hinted that Russia could be prepared to escalate its onslaught in Ukraine. "We hear that they want to defeat us on the battlefield," Mr. Putin told senior lawmakers in a televised meeting this month. "We have already heard a lot that the West wants to fight with us, to the last Ukrainian. This is a tragedy for the Ukrainian people, but it seems that everything is heading towards this. But everyone should know that, by and large, we have not started anything seriously yet." The Institute for the Study of War, a research group based in Washington, said in a report overnight that Russian forces are likely emerging from the operational pause and are attempting to resume their offensive operations in Donbas. Russian forces were able to defeat Ukraine in the main battles in Luhansk because they deployed their crushing superiority in artillery to pulverize residential areas and military positions. That may prove harder in Donetsk, experts say, because Ukrainian forces have spent years digging defensive positions and are also now starting to make use of supplies of long-range artillery from the United States and other Western countries to redress the imbalance. At the same time, both sides have suffered a high rate of attrition in personnel and equipment in recent months, so the course of what is expected to be a months-long campaign in Donetsk will, in large part, be determined by how fast these losses can be replaced. The rash of fighting in Donetsk province counters the notion of a military pause. Military analysts have said for days that Russian forces have paused their offensive operations in the Donbas region of eastern Ukraine, but try telling that to the Ukrainian fighters under the fire and dug into defensive positions in towns and villages. Skirmishes raged in at least 10 locations in Donetsk province, the Ukrainian authorities said on Friday, as the Russians tried to improve their positions along a fragmented front line, apparently in advance of what is expected to be a much larger military push to seize the parts of the province they do not control. The occupiers tried to take control of the section of the road that runs between the cities of Bakhmut and Lysychansk. The Ukrainian General Staff said in an evening bulletin that listed a host of clashes. Russian forces had also conducted assault operations in several other locations, including the villages of Nagirny and Bilohorivka. The bulletin said Ukrainian soldiers stopped all these poor attempts of the enemy with fire and pushed him back. Elsewhere in the province, the bulletin spoke of how Ukrainian soldiers again successfully repelled an assault, and in a different location it said under the fire of Ukrainian soldiers, the remnants of the enemy forces retreated. There was no immediate comment on the fighting from Moscow. The Donbas, which is close to the Russian border, that was a region of heavy industry, mining and agriculture, has been the focus of President Vladimir Putin's campaign in Ukraine since Russia forces failed to capture the country's 2 most important cities, Kyiv, the capital, and Kharkiv, early in the conflict. The Donbas is made up of Luhansk and Donetsk provinces. After weeks of fighting and an artillery barrage, the last remaining city in Luhansk province fell early this month. Since then, several experts have said Moscow has halted its large-scale operations in the Donbas to regroup and rotate its forces. President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine scoffed at the idea this week, noting a series of deadly strikes on civilian targets as well as infrastructure. And some analysts have argued for a nuanced understanding of Russia's current approach. Michael Kaufman, the director of Russia Studies at CNA, a research institute in Arlington, VA, said this week that this is a very temporary reprieve. It's not really an operational pause. Speaking on the podcast War on the Rocks, he said Russian forces were still trying to press, not very successfully, on fortified Ukrainian positions around the city of Sloviansk. He said that the next Russian advance would most likely target the city and another further south, Kramatorsk, and that the struggle for Donetsk province could last months. He and other analysts, including Western intelligence officials, have stressed that both Russia and Ukraine have suffered heavy losses and face serious problems of manpower. This week, U.S. officials and others familiar with the intelligence assessments estimated that overall, about 20,000 Russians have been killed and about 60,000 injured. Russia has tried to recruit more soldiers with offers of large cash bonuses of volunteers, Ukrainians from separatist territories, mercenaries, and militarized National Guard units. Ukraine has also been losing significant number of soldiers. In June, a senior government official said that the country was losing as many as 100 to 200 soldiers every day. The militaries also face equipment shortfalls. Almost a third of Russia's equipment has been destroyed, according to Western officials, although the Kremlin retains a significant advantage in heavy weapons. That has led Ukrainian officials to repeatedly plead for more heavy weapons and ammunition from the West, saying that they need the supplies to counter Russia's advantage from long range. On Friday, the defense minister, Oleksiy Reznikov, hailed the arrival of the first M270 multiple launch rocket system, an armored vehicle that is its most advanced artillery rocket launcher. Mr. Reznikov said that the weapon would be good company for the U.S.-supplied high-mobility artillery rocket systems, or HIMARS. The U.S. has delivered 8 and promised 4 more of the truck-mounted multiple rocket launchers. Ukraine's military says it is using the ones that have arrived to strike Russian bases and depots behind the front lines. Still, some analysts say Ukraine needs dozens more to effectively combat Russia's artillery, and Ukrainian officials have said they need as many as 300 multiple rocket launchers. We've got more exclusive updates like this one on our channel, so make sure to like the video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell icon to get the notifications of the latest videos.